My name's Pete Woods, you're watching Hexham TV. Who are you?
Hello, I'm Sara Bryson and I'm a lead community organiser with Tyne Citizens.
Hi Pete, and I'm Liz Blackshaw. I'm the Regional Secretary for the TUC up here in the north.
So we're here in Hexham at the Hexham Real Living Wage Group. You've both been speakers here this morning. What sort of things have you been saying to the group?
So today we've been celebrating the work of the Hexham Living Wage Group and the fantastic things they've been doing to try and tackle poverty and low pay in the area. And we've been sharing stories about how even though the cost of living crisis makes it seem overwhelming, like there's nothing we can do about poverty and low pay, there really is something we can do here by encouraging employers to pay people enough to live on, which transforms not just those employers' lives but the whole community, because it puts more resources back into the town. And we've been sharing stories of how we've done that elsewhere. So we've been running campaigns across Newcastle and Sunderland and Durham, where we've seen, at the moment in the country, we've got 13,000 accredited real living wage employers, which has put £2.1 billion back into the pockets of low paid workers.
We've been looking very hard at the care sector, which is where this campaign originated in, around the clap for carers during the pandemic, and a feeling in the community that clapping for the carers that were providing the care during the pandemic just wasn't sufficient, and that there had to be some deliberation over pay. And I've always applauded that piece of work that they've been embarked on, and as Sarah said, they've already had some fantastic successes, change policy at Northumberland County Council, just as one example. So I think showing that grassroots community work really does have an impact and a difference. But we're also looking at it from a trade union perspective. So from a national perspective, the TUC is working very closely with, sitting on the Low Pay Commission, working with the Living Wage Foundation as a member of the advisory board. Representatives of the TUC are involved in negotiating pay improvements right across the board. But more importantly, with the accreditation that Sarah's talking about, with different employers, stakeholder employers, big business, small employers, the TUC made a call last year for a £15 minimum wage with a clear pathway to it as well, because we know that not every employer will find it an easy thing to do. But we do know that there are plenty of big employers out there who could quite happily give a much bigger pay rise than they do every year, that trade unions shouldn't have to fight for or go on strike for. But we are where we are in that respect, and so trade unions are doing a great job in representing the workers that are part of collective bargaining systems, but we're also doing a huge shift on making sure that those workers who do not currently form part of collective bargaining can still access improved pay and conditions for employment as well.
And what would you say to someone perhaps who's not in a trade union or not sort of fighting for a real living wage at the moment, perhaps feels a bit helpless in their position, you know, that there's nothing they can do, that, you know, their employer probably wouldn't want to listen? What would you say?
I think there's always something we can do, and I get that feeling of being overwhelmed because things are really tough right now. You know, most people, almost half of all our children in this region are living in poverty. Over nearly 80% of people who are in poverty are working. So people are working hard but not earning enough to just make ends meet. We've seen huge increases in the cost of food and fuel and rents and mortgages. So people are in a lot of stress and pressure, and I think the issue is to not feel that as an individual, but to be engaged in your wider community, because you're not the only person feeling like that. And if we come together, there is something we can do about it. And employers do want to improve the region that we live in. I think that we can do something about it, but we can't do it on our own. So do join a union, do get engaged with your community, and together we can begin to turn this around. We've done it before in this region over lots of issues. This is no different. We can improve people's lives and circumstances, but don't sit at home on your own feeling overwhelmed by it all.
And what would you say to people who say, look, I just can't afford to join the union, I'm not paid enough, I haven't got the money?
I appreciate that, and you know, sort of being a union organiser for over 30 years, I've heard that many times, and especially with today's cost of living crisis and yesterday's cost of living crisis and what we're expecting to continue happening, that's going to continue to be a problem for everybody. And what I would say is this, that where you have a bargaining workforce, you always have a higher paid workforce, which does make being a union member accessible. Unions are very conscious of the affordability element, and so there are always conversations and access routes into union membership where you don't necessarily pay the full amount to begin with until you achieve certain levels of representation for bargaining purposes. So there are lots of ways that unions are trying to support people coming into unions without necessarily having to jump into big membership fees, but equally it is an important subscription because that's how unions function. Without their members, there isn't a union. So whilst I also understand the affordability, we also have to remember that currently, as Sarah's just said, half our children are living in poverty across this region. That's because workers don't have pay rises that they need. That's because mums and dads are working 2 jobs each to try and make ends meet. So getting involved in trade unions will make a difference to that, because the more workers that are covered by collective bargaining, in addition to having support measures like the National Minimum Wage, the Living Wage Foundation campaigning for that, we would be in much bigger trouble than we're in. So with that combination of joining a union, that combination of getting involved in your local citizens groups that are campaigning for pay, making sure that your voice is in there somewhere will just make a difference for you and for everybody else as well.
So if people want to find out about your organisations, where should they go?
All the usual places. Website www.citizensuk.org. We've got the Twitter page, a Facebook page, and all of those usual things. Any Google search will pull up the information.
Yeah, similarly with us, www.tuc.org.uk, and all the information that you need about all of our campaigns, including pay, will be on there. And I would draw your attention to 2 things: our wage campaign that started last summer, and our new social care campaign, which the paper came out in August. So have a look for those documents and see if there's anything in there that kind of gets you inspired to get moving, as well as the information that Sarah's sharing as well.
Thank you both for talking to Hexham TV.
No problem, thank you.